Hey there, friends. This is Bill McDonald, the Reading and Writing Doctor here. Welcome to CREST Online Training Part 2 on revising. Today is going to be about transitions, how to move from one sentence to the other, from one idea to the next, and or one paragraph to the next to connect sentences. So I'm going to show it to you in the binder, but I think it's going to be important that you, as we mentioned in spelling slash vocabulary transitions part of our part one, that you print out pages 251 and 252 of the binder so that your students can have an all-encompassing transition words and phrases list to help them practice and being good at reading when one idea moves to the next, one paragraph moves to the next, and what transition words or phrases or sentences are being used to do that in. So if I can get good at that in reading, then when it comes to revising, then we're going to think of it this way, that the teeter-totter works this way, that I have an idea already in a sentence, and then as I teeter-totter to the next sentence, I've got to do something that many of you call looking closely at the text structure. What is the relationship between one idea and how it moves to the next one? So I call it the teeter transition totter, the C transition saw. Now, the good news is I have several examples of transitions in the binder that we're going to use for exactly. But I noticed on the 2022 English 1 and English 2 revising portion of the test, they didn't include any transition words or phrases this year. And it doesn't mean that they're not going to next year. It probably means that they're going to next year. Usually, if one revising strategy or technique gets left off of the test one year, you can pretty much guarantee that it's going to show up the next one. So what I would recommend that you do if you're wanting some extra practice is to look through all of the 4th, 7th, 9th, and 10th grade tests. When you open up the release tests for writing, you're going to see that in 4th grade, there's going to be 2 passages in a row from the very beginning that are revising, where revising is looking at a paper differently right now than you will later because you're going to improve the content. In 7th grade, I believe there were 13. It's been a couple years since we've had writing in 7th grade now. So, but I'm thinking it was like one passage would have 6 and one would have 7, something like that. So I would suggest, again, you look at the first 2 passages in many of the release tests from 7th grade, and those are not on the writing, and those are going to be what your writing tests will look like for, the fourth grade one will be pretty much what 3rd, 4th, and 5th is going to look like, and the 7th grade is going to be what 6th, 7th, and 8th will look like, and English 1 and 2 is pretty much going to look the same way. So if you're an English 1 or 2 teacher, you're still going to have editing, 2 passages of editing and 2 passages of revising. And when I did the math, it's going to be about 11 questions each. So keep that in mind. I'm going to focus specifically on 4 questions of revising using my binder. So let me share first a reminder of our writing folder. When you are doing revising, you're changing how something is organized or how it's developed. And so in the case of transitions, we're not adding, removing, replacing. All we're doing is moving. We're just saying, I need to move these sentences together. I need to figure out how to connect them, but it's only because they tend to stay in their two sentences. For example, if this is sentence 15, the teeter, then the transition will be the transitional word or phrase at the beginning of the next sentence. So you're technically, all you're doing is you're basically saying, I need to move in to that second sentence with this word, this transition word or phrase. So in a sense, you are adding a word, but sometimes what's happening is they put a transition word or phrase that's not appropriate for the question. And so you would do the red here, you would remove the one that's too vague or inappropriate, and you would replace it with one that's more specific. If there's not a transition there at all, I call that reader's whiplash, because you suddenly go to the next idea without a transition, or what I call a transmission. So it's hard to move without transitions. So if you are in 3rd through 5th grade, you're going to have 2 passages and about 8 points starting next April/May for revising for you guys. 6th through 8th grade is going to have about 9 points in 2 passages, and 9th and 10th grade are going to have about 11 points. Now, the only kinds of questions that they can add to the editing and revising are the 1 or 2 point constructed response type questions, which means they're going to give you some of these here. And remember that for reading, I intentionally drew that red line there so that all of your reading related constructed type 1 or 2 point questions are going to be above the red line. But I was told by the director of writing for TEA that the editing and revising will just stick with 1 point. There won't be multiple answers. Now, we'll find out if that's true when we get the actual official, not the preliminary test design schematics. So let's see how that goes, but just keep in mind that for now, according to the preliminary test design schematic, the blueprints, that's how many points. You might want to write that down somewhere so you can understand that there'll be 2. Now, if they do the test for 3rd through 8th grade like they do 9th and 10th, and like they've always done for reading and math, they start with the revising passages, then they move to the editing, okay? And if they follow the 9th and 10th grade pattern, they'll have the 2 revising, the 2 editing, then they'll have the reading questions. And it used to be that the prompt was kind of thrown in there right after the revising and the editing, but since there will only be a question and response to a topic, you won't have to worry about that anymore. So let me show you real quick. If you want to write this down on some lined paper, where the transition questions we're going to practice today are from page 569 of the binder, where we just practice it in the context of one sentence or two. Then we'll practice the elementary/secondary ones in the context of a passage on pages 375, 378, 388. I don't know if that's the right number or not. If it's not, then I'll go ahead and post another video, but I'm going to try and do all these in one so we can finish revising this week. and get into part 3, the constructed type responses of as many different types as we can cover uh, for you guys so that your kids will get used to that new structure. And like I'm saying, the reason I started with editing and revising is because most students aren't used to any editing and revising at all. So we've got to start somewhere, and that's why I wanted to start with that. So just to let you know, English 1 and English 2 teachers, this year's test did not have any transition words or phrases. So make sure that you go ahead and um, look through some of the other years of 4th, 7th, 9th, or 10th on the writing. If you're an elementary or a middle school teacher, you're going to have to go to what's called the archived section because writing is no longer being tested in that format. You'll find it in the archive section. If you have trouble finding that, just email me and I will send you the link. In fact, what I'll do in this email, if I can remember, if I forget, remind me in email. Several of you are real good at reminding me about things if I forget them. I'll send you a link to the old writing test for 4th and 7th grade so that you can practice some of these editing and revising skills because nothing is going to change. The structure of the questions is pretty much going to continue. I've already seen the samples and I've made new passages based on the samples that were given. One thing that you're going to notice is that editing and revising passages on the new reading test are going to be shorter in length than what the students were used to seeing before. And I think that's so that they're going to probably try to stay within the 4-hour limit and not allow your students to have 5 hours, which I think is a mistake, but I guess we'll see what happens. Let me go ahead and come out and I'll share my screen with you from the binder. The first thing that we're going to look at, if you notice there on the left, it says page 569. All right. So it's revising. And when you take a look, what's going to happen is at the beginning of an actual passage on this page right here, your kids are going to see so and so is doing something. Look at the passage, read the selection, and see if there's any revisions that can be made. So not only will it say revision on top, in the instructions will be the word revisions, do the revisions that need to be made. And so this one is the practicing, editing, and revising at the sentence or paragraph level before we try to get confident with the passage level. So we're going to read the question, then we'll read it here in the sentence that's being asked about. We'll try to understand clearly what the question is asking, and we'll understand how it's written in the parentheses, because in editing and revising, they tell you the sentence numbers. And then whatever you've been teaching them, the labeling will be the way that they mark. And unfortunately, we're limited, as we know, on the online test. So it'll be probably more highlighting, but go to the note taking section of the online portion and have them either write your strategy there or on line paper where they would literally write on the line paper number 6, and then they could write the word rules and show you that they're checking off their checklist, doing the things that you've asked them to. Okay, so let's get started and let's see how we can handle a question that has transition. Pepito wants to use a more appropriate transition. In other words, the one that's there isn't appropriate for the situation that's being asked about. Where? In sentence 15. Okay. So if they were to ask your students in the future, what is the change that needs to be made? It'll be the one that we're going to do right here in multiple choice. And where does it need to be made? They can say in sentence 17, it says this, comma, but it should be this. Which is the following can best replace furthermore. So replace means that something comes out. This furthermore word is going to come out, and something else is going to go in. So your kids have to practice enough transition words and phrases so that they know that as soon as they see a word like further, more, basically it means more of the same. Okay, so that would be something that you would be having to teach your kids little by little throughout the year when you're talking about spelling slash vocabulary slash transition words and phrases. They have to know furthermore. That means I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to give you some examples or explain myself. And then I'll say furthermore, which means I'm going to give you even more. So apparently that wasn't appropriate for this situation because it wasn't going to be more of the same. Let's see what they told us. Capital. Many students were invited to the writing practice session today. Teeter. Furthermore, transition. Furthermore, a lot of them chose to stay home, comma, sleep a little longer, comma, and relax, period. So since students were invited, this part right here, to a practice session, but kids did the opposite, they stayed home, we need to keep that in mind when we're choosing our answer. So if we say, for example, well, for example means I gave you an idea, what we'll call a topic sentence, a main idea, and then we're going to give an example of that idea. Since the students staying home is the opposite, then it wouldn't make sense to use the phrase, for example. In conclusion means a bunch of information was given and they're going to wrap it up. And since only one sentence was given in this situation, many kids were invited to the session, but they didn't want to come. So it doesn't make sense, and neither does overall, because if I say overall means all encompassing, like now that I've shared all of this with you, now that I've gone over all of this with you, here's what we're going to conclude. Well, since we're looking for the opposite, the best answer in this case would be instead. So how does that look on the revising graphic organizer? Let me come out and show you so that you could have your kids, even if you don't want to use the revising graphic organizer, if they use the teeter-totter concept, the seesaw concept, here is the one that we're looking at. Let me make sure I get the right one. From page 569, it says on sentence 14, there you go. And I'm going to use paper on this first one, the laminated one on the second one, and then I'll use an online digital copy on the third and the fourth one so you can see different ways to practice the same skill with your kids. So if your kids just make their own T chart, on the left side they would put capital. Many students were invited to the writing practice session today, period. Transition. Teeter to the totter. Furthermore, a lot of them chose to stay home, sleep a little longer, and relax. So if I try that one that I'm telling you, many students were invited to the writing practice session today, period. Instead, I think that was the answer. Instead, a lot of them chose to stay home, sleep a little more longer, and relax. So as I move from the teeter to the totter, from the C to the psalm, the reason I use red and yellow is to 911 red. Pay close attention to what they give you in section A and see its relationship to section B. If they only give you section B, or what's the only thing that's clear is section B, then you've got to say, okay, how does that relate to section A, to part A? And so in this case, the best answer would have been, let's take a look and see which one we would have chosen. We would have gotten rid of, for example, in conclusion and overall, we would choose instead. So that would mean that if they're doing their online, they would submit that answer. And if you want them to prove their answer in the note section on paper or on the upper right-hand corner, your kids can say with their pencil, their keyboard, I'm choosing this one because the opposite of what was offered was what the students chose to do. Okay. The second one, okay, what I'm going to do first is show it to you on the chart, the teeter-totter graphic organizer, so you can see how clear it makes things be. We got the glare, so I'll turn off the light on the machine so that you don't have that. You'll just have a shadow in a special place today. So what we're going to do is we're going to look, this one leaves one paragraph, as you can see here, and goes to the next one. So if you're going to leave a paragraph and they want to know what transition word to start or what phrase to start the next paragraph with, it's important to read the last sentence of the paragraph you're leaving so that you can see how to transmission to the paragraph that you're going to. So this is from page 375. So it says, capital, in my free time, that's a when, comma, capital, I work out. All right. I like to work out in my free time. No problem. Well, let's see how they transmission over to paragraph 2. Nothing is more satisfying than pumping iron, drenched in sweat, and burning all of those calories. Okay. I've collected throughout the day, period. Now, if you want to make the content a little bit, I had a friend of mine help me write some of these passages, and I didn't perfect them, but you might tell the kids, since satisfying and pumping is ing, you might teach them to go ahead and use drenching. So it might sound better saying something like, nothing is more satisfying than pumping iron, drenching your body in sweat, or being ing, drenched in sweat, and burning all of those calories I've collected throughout the day. So you'll notice that there was a list and the and was not there. So I wanted to practice the comma with the Oxford comma with the conjunction and there. So since what you're reading there is somebody's opinion that nothing is more satisfying than doing, well, that's not true. A lot of people hate exercising and hate it with a passion. So I need something that goes from what I like to do to stating an opinion. So what we'll do is we'll go to page 375 and see what the choices are for us so that we can choose the correct one. Let me go to page 375. Hopefully all of you have an Adobe Acrobat that allows you to quickly go to a page just like that. Um, as we see here, there's my number 3, my transition. What transition word or phrase? We'll kind of read along there. Uh, uh, Winners move 3 things: their eyes, their mouth, and track with their mouse. What transition, ding, 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 make them do that, teeter-totter, seesaw, word or phrase could best be added at the beginning of sentence 5? Okay, in my opinion, which is one that I was telling you to watch for. Furthermore, which means I'm going to tell you more about something, and that could be one, but what I want you to realize is whenever you're starting a paragraph and you're sharing the first idea with somebody, furthermore, might not be the word that you would use at the beginning. It might be something that would be in the middle or towards the end of a paragraph. So we're going to see if, however, meaning the opposite could be appropriate, or in conclusion. Um, you would use in conclusion if you're concluding the passage. And since it's only sentence 5, I'm going to guess that in conclusion wouldn't be the best. Okay. So sometimes just looking at the answer choices and using common sense will help. But let's go ahead and take a look at sentence 5. So I'll back up the passage to page 374. And there it is right there. We would want to, because we're allowed to do that, we would want to highlight, and what we have is this here and the rest of the teeter-totter. So that was sentence 5. And what I said to do was sometimes the best way to know how to transition is find out what your last sentence was on the previous paragraph so that when you do the teeter-totter, the T-chart, the transition, you check and see how do you move from something that you do or like to do to an opinion. Nothing is more satisfying than pumping iron, being drenched in sweat, and burning all those calories I've collected throughout the day. Since what we said was true, that they're starting in a sentence with an opinion, then maybe you need a phrase or a word that allows you to let the reader know, hey, I'm about to give you an opinion. So as you can see here, in my opinion, that's true. Furthermore, is not good because you're barely starting the paragraph. However, the opposite statement, no, because we're saying I like to work out, then you say how you like to work out, and that you say there's nothing better than that. And in the conclusion wouldn't fit because you're barely starting the idea. So the best answer for this question would be letter A, where you say what transition, word, or phrase could be added, in my opinion. Okay. So what I suggest that you do every time that you're doing something that maybe you think is a little harder, instead of doing your next question very quickly, do a quick, what I call an extension, where your kids can give you an example or a few examples of a statement, in my opinion. And that's personal point of view, first person. So it's cool, whatever they write, because it's just their opinion. It's just the way that they view the world. So our next two are on page 378. So I will go there and allow you to go with me in your binder to page 378. I'll clear the drawings. What transition word could best be added at the beginning of sentence 9? So what are we going to highlight? Remember, we're skipping around so that we can find something that allows us to say, oh, transition word or phrase. That means that we're leaving one idea and going to another one. Now, the word best often means that there's a distractor there that many kids might get too distracted by and pick it. So there's probably going to be two answers that are probably relatively reasonable. So where are we going to put it? At the beginning of sentence 9. So let me highlight that. And then your kids on their line paper, they could quickly draw. You don't want them because they won't be able to have the T chart. They won't be able to have the teeter-totter transition. They can quickly draw a T for transition, and they could put, since they're going to be transitioning to sentence 9, then they can say, okay, let me check and see what 8 says. Then I can look and see what 9 says. All right. So it's going to be, because every person is so unique. Okay. That means that hopefully sentence 8 will be talking about people being different. However, meaning the opposite. Since we all need friends, then in fact, okay, that means they give you an idea and then they add to the idea with another example or another idea. So I guess we'll see how is it that they move from sentence 8 to sentence 9 so we can pick the best one for the situation. So sentence 9 will back up to our passage. There it is. And I just want to show you right here real quick. Whenever your students read the actual passage, you're going to see that it's going to say revision up here. And then right here in the instructions, it will say the word revisions, which means your kids can write now and later, or they can write arm. We're going to be adding, removing, replacing, or moving something. So we're looking for sentence 9. So I will scroll down. So again, sentence 9 is the beginning of a paragraph. So it's going to be similar to what we just did on the last one. If you're starting a paragraph, what they're saying is, I've got to be able to put something which would be a teeter-totter transition at the beginning here to join this idea to this one over here, the one that's in sentence 8. So they're always going to have to say, let's back up and do the Michael Jackson moonwalk so that they can determine. Sometimes my mouse disappears on me, so it takes me a little while to find it. There it is. So let's see if it works just looking at only the two sentences that they're asking us to move between. This is relatively uncommon, though, because how difficult it can be to find a friend that fits your qualifications. So the key words here, and if you want to think of it like this, is what is it that they're talking about? Um, Finding friends. Okay. Why is it difficult? Is not a positive thing. A difficult is a negative thing. So they could draw an arrow in the notes. Um, they could write the word negative. Fits your qualifications. What you're trying to do is the subject is trying to find a friend that specifically fits your qualifications. Well, what does that mean? Well, whatever you're looking for in a friend. So let's see how they transition. A friend needs to sort of have a personality and a sense of humor about things in life that matches up with yours. So, according to this author, they need to say, okay, a friend that meets my personality. What were some of the key words that we can focus in on? Um, One idea, they need to have a personality and a sense of humor about certain things that matches up with your own, that's close to your own. Okay. So as I check it, just keywords, it's hard to find friends that meet our qualifications. They have to have a personality and a sense of humor that matches our own. So let's see which one does the best on that. So I'm just going to remember my keywords, and then we'll do what we call guess and check on number 3. Okay. It's hard to find a friend that meets your qualifications. Transition. Because every person is so unique, you want to find one that uh, meets, that has your sense of humor and your character. Well, if people are so unique, then what I'm guessing here is if people are that unique, maybe it's going to be almost impossible. So I will put a question mark here, meaning that we could pick the answer, but it sounds like if the next sentence says that we need to have a friend that matches our personality and character, according to this transition phrase here, it means that we're going to have a hard time doing it. It's difficult to find a friend that meets our qualifications. However, we need, everybody wants to find one that matches our personality, our character, our sense of humor, whatever you want to call it. Since that sounds like the opposite is not happening, I don't think that would be the best answer. So I'll place a little X over on the left-hand side, not touching. And again, we're hoping to God that instead of having to write A, B, C, D in your notes in the upper right-hand portion or A, B, C on the paper, that you'll be able to go ahead and use the actual A, B, C, D that's written in your online test and be able to do all of the annotations right there. All right, it's difficult to find friends that meet our qualifications. Transition. Since we all need friends, we want to try and find some that meet our personality traits, our character traits, and our sense of humor. That sounds like it could work. Okay. It's hard to find friends that meet our qualifications. In fact, it's We want to find someone that meets our qualifications, since in fact it is kind of contrary to it's hard. Uh, it sounds like that they're reinforcing. So it seems like to me like the best one would be here. So I'm going to plug that in to the actual sentence and see how it works, since we all need friends. Let's take a look and see how it works on the sentence itself. This is relatively uncommon though, because of how difficult it can be to find a friend that fits your qualifications. Since we all need friends, a friend needs to sort of have a personality and a sense of humor about certain things that matches up with yours. I think that sounds good. Um, and you could probably um, debate, in fact, it's difficult to find a friend that meets your qualifications. In fact, since that fact that's coming up doesn't really complement what was said before, I always tell my kids, if the fact that's following the word in fact doesn't really line up with the fact that's before it, then you might eliminate in fact. So that's in fact what we will do. We'll go back to our choice and we'll have that. So now remember that on page 251 and 252 that they're not going to have that whole phrase. It'll have since. And so your kids are going to have to put their own little thing, but a little suggestion here is because that's a dependent clause, you would literally want to add a comma there to slow down. Since we all need friends, comma, would be the best way to do that. And I believe that would be the most appropriate. Our last one, let me see if I made a mistake or not. It does say that on page 388, 10 pages later, that there's going to be a transition. There it is. Okay. So Bill has not used the most effective transition at the beginning of sentence 10. Where? At the beginning of sentence 10. So one thing that you can do is you can draw your teeter-totter right here. Let me erase that and I'll use black. Okay. There's the word transition. Okay. And then right there where the word transition is on the question, you can make your little T center so that you can say, okay, now I know that I need to go from sentence 9 to sentence 10 with my teeter-totter. So as a result, if you look at this, cause leads to a transition, which leads to an effect. So since they're saying that as a result needs to be removed, that means that whatever is over here is probably not the cause. So as a result needs to be removed. So that's going to come out. Let me click on there so we can say, okay, take that out. Oh, let me go ahead and use the colors. That might be a good idea. As a result needs to come out. And so if you can't make arrows like this, use red highlighting for as a result to say that's going to go out of right here. We're not going to put as a result right on this spot right here at the beginning of sentence 10. So to conclude, means we're finishing something. For example means we're going to tell you more about sentence 9. Instead means we're going to tell you the opposite of sentence 9. In other words, means we're going to explain it in a different way than sentence 9. So let's see which one to conclude, for example, instead, or other words. So 9 and 10. Here we go. This is on one called Carmina's hasty decision. Okay. Has somebody talking on sentence 9. So what we have to remember is we already know that we're leaving sentence 9, quotation capital, someone call 911, she yells at the top of her lungs. Okay. So somebody's asking somebody to do something. Okay. So is there going to be an effect? Is there going to be a conclusion? As a result, everyone is just staring at Carmina. As a result, everyone is just staring at Carmina with their mouths open. No one is able to move a muscle. So since somebody in sentence 9 is telling people to do something, but the opposite is actually what's happening, then what you might have to do, instead of just saying, I need to look for the opposite, you might have to do the arms that are in the folder. And if you remember, it's basically, and I'll put it in red, uh, actors remember more sequence. That if we act these two sentences out, we can kind of see what's happening and what's not happening. Someone call 911, she yells at the top of her lungs. As a result, everyone is just staring at Carmina with their mouths open. So we need to pick one that has the opposite happening, since they're not doing what was being asked of them. So to conclude, no, for example, no, instead. So the best one in this case would be the word instead, because when somebody tells you to do something and you do the opposite, then the best answer would be, and again, I'm trying desperately to get my mouse to the right spot. There it is. Okay. So that means that we're using the opposite. So I'm done with transitions. I'll move to the next. What I would like you to do for your challenge is to use the word instead as your transition to your second sentence. I want you to have two sentences and then have an opposite statement. Something that you would like, in it can be from your professional. This is my non-married hand. To my personal, I keep my watch and my wedding ring on my left hand, but it got stolen from me by a hotel manager. He never sent it to me. Sure what to do about that. So think of something in your personal or professional life, and what I would love for you to do is do an extension, do an example of an instead transition, that you wanted something personal to happen, but instead this other thing happened, or you did this other thing, or in your professional life that you tell a kid to do something, or in the situation in the story that we were reading, somebody said for somebody to do something and the opposite happened. So that's your challenge to earn some points. Message me or email me a two-sentence transition as you move from a teeter to a totter, a C to a saw, a, an idea to its opposite. So, in other words, from something good, possibly, to something bad, or from something bad to something good. So, uh, it could be you want some specific thing to happen over here on the teeter, but a transition different thing actually happens instead of what you want. So make sure you use the word instead, or you can use any other synonym of instead if you want to use the list from page 251, 252, you'll get extra credit if you use one. And I did promise you that I would. I want to make sure that I show you that um, from the binder when you click on page 251, you will see there a nice long list of transition words, conjunctions, and phrases, and 252. Um, by the time that the entire year finishes, hopefully your kids will be able to have good practice using as many of those as possible. So we would look for in here, we would look for the one that would mean the opposite. And so I will scroll through here and see if I can see where they would have the opposite statement. There it is on page 251, the opposition, the limitation, the contradiction. So it would be any of these here in this section, here, or here, or here. And so, yes, you can use instead, but depending on your grade level, you might practice connecting to transition uh, trains with one of these phrases. So there you have it. Thanks for your patience on this long video. I just wanted to give you a good sampling of that. Um, Relationships between ideas are very difficult. Um, when we get into reading, there's going to be a lot of cause and effect text structures. Compare, contrast, same, different. And the paired passages, there's always going to be some questions about the pair, some questions about the passage. In other words, the left shoe, the right shoe, and then they'll ask you some questions about how the laces from this shoe tie to this shoe, how they're the same and how they're different. And so when we get more into the reading, parts 3, 4, and 5, we'll get to practice quite a few text structures where we do the teeter-totter slash seesaw relationships, moving from one idea to the next, one sentence to the next, one paragraph to the next. Um, so don't forget, if you can do me a favor and send that. I was going to send something to you guys, but I forgot what it was already. So if you remember what it was that I said I would send as an attachment, if I remember it by the time I finish uploading this video to you, I'll send it. But if I don't, go ahead and email me whatever it was that I forgot, because some of you are good at reminding me, and I will make sure everybody gets a copy of whatever it was. Oh, it was the link to the archived um, 4th and 7th grade tests so that you'll be able to practice all of the different revising and editing in there, since the structure of the questioning, the keyword strands are going to be the same. So God bless you guys. Don't forget your challenge if you want extra points, which will lead towards prizes and a free training for one of you in the CREST online training. Take care and God bless.